Well, more now on a historic visit to the White House. U.S. President Donald Trump is expected to meet with Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara this hour. It comes less than a year after al-Shara's lightning offensive to claim power in the war-torn country. Since then, the 43-year-old has tried to break with his past as a jihadist with links to Al-Qaeda and present a more moderate image. Here's some of that effort. You can see him playing basketball with top U.S. military officials this past weekend. The Syrian leader has a number of goals to achieve, including the lifting of all sanctions against his country. I want to take a closer look at the Syrian president's White House visit with longtime journalist and author Wright. She is a columnist at The New Yorker and joins us now from Washington, D.C. Great to have you with us, Robin.
Great to be with you, Linda.
So from a jailed Al-Qaeda militant to the White House, just how extraordinary is it for someone who fought Americans in Syria to now be meeting with the U.S. president?
Not only to have fought Americans, but who has been detained by the United States. This is such a remarkable moment in history, such a reversal. This is a man who has transformed Syria in a very short time coming to the White House. Now, there's a lot of business the two men have together, and today they're only likely to address some of it being just tokens, symbols of a different kind of relationship. But this is a signal that the United States is very much engaged in Syria's future.
Yeah, he is, of course, the first Syrian president ever to visit the White House since Syria's independence back in 1946. And he was only removed from the U.S. State Department terrorist list a few days ago on Friday. I'm wondering what the White House hopes to get out of this meeting, because we've heard that, Washington believes that they can get Syria on a U.S.-led coalition in terms of its fight against the U.S. militant group ISIS. But given the territorial defeat already, how big a threat is ISIS ideologically speaking?
ISIS remained a threat in both Syria and Iraq. It has cells operating. It engages in kidnappings and killings of local officials. So it is still a threat as perceived in Damascus and in Washington. Now, one of the biggest things to come out of this meeting will be Syria's agreement to join the 85 nations in the anti-ISIS coalition. And of course, this is also a moment the United States is going to ask for access to a military airfield so that it can monitor a potential softening of relations between Syria and Israel. Ultimately, the United States wants Syria very much to join the Abraham Accords, which have cemented peaceful relations between Israel and several Arab countries. And this could be the biggest of them all so far.
And of course, the last time these two met was back in May in a meeting that was reportedly brokered by the Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman, back in May. And we heard back then that Trump called him a young, attractive guy with a very strong past. What do you make of that assessment and the fact that some sanctions were lifted as a result?
There's still a lot of sanctions in place, and this will be one of President al-Shara's key requests. Nothing, I think, is going to happen very quickly. There are layers of sanctions, including the Caesar Act, which involves some congressional approval. They can begin again taking further steps. But al-Shara wants to indicate to the outside world that the United States believes there is a future and it's worth the investment. So in some ways, this is a transactional meeting as well. The damage from a 14-year civil war is estimated to be in the hundreds of billions of dollars, and Syria needs outside investment to reconstruct and actually to stabilize the country in ways that are at the heart of not only al-Shara's future politically and physically, but in terms of Syria's place and ability to provide for its citizens.
And of course, Robin, Syria has traditionally been aligned with Russia and Iran. Is this a sign of a major pivot, Or is the Syrian president just expanding his options?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both. He's expanding his options and looking, he knows where the money is. It's certainly not in Iran, which has lost much of its influence in the region over the past year. It's certainly not in Russia, which is absorbed in the war in Ukraine. The investment is clearly from the West and potentially from China, but uh, the preference among Syrians, among even al-Shara and the former jihadi groups, is to look for real money that is long term and that can deal in more sophisticated ways. Syria has a long history and it wants to reclaim its place. I think that the Iranians and the Russians are going to try to keep a stake in the country, and al-Shara will clearly negotiate with them, but he's really looking beyond those two for a future.
And I just heard moments ago, President al-Shara of Syria has just arrived at the White House to meet with US President Donald Trump. Robin, given your long reporting on US sanction regimes, do you think the lifting or suspending of the sanctions under the Caesar Act risks legitimizing a new authoritarian regime under this new president?
Well, President al-Shara clearly has a lot to prove still in terms of protecting minorities. There are tensions with the Kurds that are, it's a very important relationship. We've relied in the United States on the Kurds for years to lead the anti-ISIS fight. There are tensions between the regime, which is predominantly Sunni, with the Druze in the south. So there are internal ethnic and religious tensions. Remember, this is a country that has a significant Christian community. It has Alawite community, a minority that led the country for 50 years. And so there's a lot of sorting out in terms of making sure that Syria is one country and doesn't split and doesn't have to hold together by authoritarian rule.
All right, Robin Wright, for us columnist at The New Yorker. Great to have your analysis today. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.